Welcome to Off the Coast, where we examine the views from Vancouver Island with your host, Rosemarie Barnes. New and exciting things, preserved and respected things, business, recreation, politics, travel, all from the point of view of the people living and working on the island. Rosemarie is a professional speaker and certified speaking coach living in historic Ladysmith and loving every day of the island life. Here is your Vancouver Island host, Rosemarie.
Welcome, good listeners, to Off the Coast, Views from Vancouver Island. I'm your host for the show, Rosemarie Barnes, the maverick voice at Confident Stages. The show, Off the Coast, is all about Vancouver Island, its people, its places, its influence on the world and the world's influence on it. It is our little piece of island paradise in Canada on the West Coast. I am absolutely thrilled. I am over the moon happy to be inviting my guest for today, Trish Scoular. Trish is a very eclectic Renaissance type lady. There's very little that this remarkable woman hasn't done. She has worked with seniors for 21 years as a continuing care assistant. Then she became a registered professional counselor in 2014 after completing a 2-year internship in Nanaimo. She graduated with a diploma in applied psychology and counseling. Trish is a life learner with a diploma in broadcast arts, radio and TV, cosmetology, and makeup art. She's a Reiki master teacher, an artist with the Ladysmith Waterfront Art Gallery. She's the president of the regional management team and BC marketing rep for the CPCA, which is the Canadian Professional Counselors Association. She's a lifetime member of worldwidebranding.com and the author of a poetry book, Whispering Thoughts, poems about love, life, and living, available on Amazon. Then, if that wasn't enough, right now she's working on a children's book and is illustrating another. Now, if that doesn't qualify as a Renaissance person, slightly displaced in time, but ever so eclectic and wonderful, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet Trish Scoular. Hello, Trish.
Hi, Rosemarie. Thank you so much. That was quite the welcome.
Yes, and it's always wonderful to be able to welcome such extraordinary people as you. When are you a Vancouver Islander from birth, or are you a recent immigrant to our little piece of paradise?
Actually, I grew up in Alberta, in a small town, and we grew up mostly in Calgary. And so I came there, and I lived there until I was 18 years old. And then I moved to New Brunswick and lived there for a few months, and then came back and ended up in the West Coast.
You are a coast-to-coast Canadian.
I am. I love to travel, and I love to meet new people, and I really love the East Coast people. They just are really wonderful, and they're so welcoming, and they just embrace you.
I am so ashamed to say, I have never been to the Maritimes, but oh my goodness, it is so solidly in that bucket list. I absolutely must go. So what brought you to the island then?
I've actually lived here twice. I lived up in Pearl River after coming back from living in Israel for 6 months with my relatives that have lived there since the late 60s, and they're documentary filmmakers. And so
wow.
they've produced 130 documentaries, mostly to do with the history of Israel, and they were just awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award from the World Jewish Congress and the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
they must be so proud of them.
I am very, very proud of them. It's my dad's niece and her husband, and of course all their children have been involved, and they've all been raised over in that part of the world. And I'm very proud of them. We're a very close family, and they're actually, growing up as a child, I've had a few of my own relatives that I really looked up to, and they were one of them. And then another one, which was Barry Broadfoot, and he lived here in Nanaimo, and he was a journalist for the Vancouver Sun, and wrote many books and won the Order of Canada for the books he wrote on the war years. And then another cousin that I grew up listening to, Charity Brown, who's a singer, and she's very well known back in Toronto.
Yes, yes. Oh my
Yes.
goodness, we are, ladies and gentlemen, in Radioland, we are in the presence of greatness by association, if for nothing else. But not to be confused, you have your own greatness that we
I
need to
have
hear
my
about
own
too.
journey. Exactly. And that's it. We all have our own journeys. It doesn't matter what family we belong to. But when we grow up and we look up to people that are part of our family, we think that we can do just as much as they can and contribute just as much to the world as they have.
And you have. In so many ways, you have your little tendrils in so many vital places for the well-being of humanity.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Now, would you please tell me about, I rattled off, the CPCA, the Canadian Professional Counselors Association. Not being trained in that world, I'm going to need you to fill me in on that.
Well, the Canadian Professional Counselors Association just had their 25th anniversary, and that was this past September, and we celebrated that in Vernon, where the head office is. We go all across Canada, and we have regional management teams in each province. We're a national nonprofit association registered in accordance with the Canada Corporations Act, and we're governed by a national board of directors. We are an inclusive competency-based model, which means that we go by our skills training, our professional experience, and our natural abilities. Our membership represents a diverse scope and range of counseling-related educational backgrounds, such as a PhD down to a diploma, like myself. And that is in many valid forms of counseling psychology. Right now, we're hoping to get a college going, but I don't want to get too much into that at this point. But these are things that are sort of in the process in the next year. You'll see coming more in play across Canada. So
do you have the clients that you have worked with, do they fall into any sort of ilks, or do you have clients from across a broad spectrum of folks needing assistance?
I've just started getting my practice up and running actually just in the last year. I graduated in 2014, so I started my business. It's just been in play for the last really about a year. So in my internship, though, I did work with the Aboriginal people, and I did get involved with the UBC Learning Circle, which is a really wonderful organization. And they're out of course, UBC. And it's just an opportunity as a provider to and as a guest to have the privilege of just sitting amongst them through a webinar like this and just listening and being educated about what they're doing and how things are going really well for them and how things are healing with the residential schools and that sort of stuff. So that's kind of what I was involved with mostly. And I did have some rather interesting clients. Right now I'm branching into seniors because I have worked with them for 21 years as a long-term care aide, and I've worked 9 years up in the Pell River Hospital. So I worked in extended care, intermediate care. I did a lot of one-to-ones and helping out on different floors for the hospital, and I got a lot of experience, and I took many, many courses because I wanted to be really good at what I did, and I wanted to really have good knowledge that I could really give the people the best care that they deserved, because I've always been very empathic, and my mother always said when I was a child that I always had a lot of empathy, and I used to take a lot of kids under my wings and people. So I guess I've always been that way. And even though I wanted to go into acting, and that's kind of where but I didn't end up that way. That was my fun life. I think we all kind of have that fantasy and that dream about, doing something a little bit unusual like that. But I've always been a helper, really.
Does it, I'm fairly empathic myself. So I wonder when you have this great sensitivity and caring and compassion for others, what do you have to do to stop yourself from being hurt? Because you feel their pain. So how long does it take you, or are you at the point yet, where you can care so deeply about the people you're working with, but still not be, how do you create a boundary? How do you create your own personal purple bubble of safety?
That took a long time to learn because I didn't realize really how sensitive I was until I started working up in Pell River. And So it's really been a life learning over the last 20 years of how to protect myself and why I was feeling certain things, and that they didn't belong to people, and they weren't my issues, they were other people's issues. And I kind of got into a bit of a struggle there for a while, thinking that I needed to fix everybody because people were coming to me with their problems. And I think they were just coming more as a friend and just wanting to talk, but I was wanting to rescue them and to help them and to empower them. And, come on,
And
you
all
can do
those
that.
things. Yes. Yes.
All those
And
things that
it
we
must
do.
be, it must be so difficult being the person you are
It
to,
has its challenges.
yes, yes. How do you take a step back and say, yes, I can offer suggestions, but it's not my problem? We were at a networking meeting recently where the speaker was talking about not my monkey, not my circus. And how, when you are so empathetic, how do you stop from adopting other people's problems as your own when we want to fix them?
Yeah. Actually, to be honest, it wasn't until I went back to school and took the counseling training and I realized that that's not our job, and we have to really step back and realize that we're not here to fix people. People have their own journeys and they have their own paths. And as difficult it is, it's sort of like a parent with their child, as difficult as you don't want to see them go through the struggles that they are, you have to step back and just say that I have to allow them to make the choices that they are, whether I respect that or not. And we find that even working with seniors, some of them living in their homes and having dementia, not having the people around to support them and that sort of thing. And we're always wondering why they're living at home still, but really that's not our business. And we don't always know the bigger picture of what's going on in someone's life. So we have to really be cautious of that. And I've learned one day I can tell you an example, actually, when I lived on the mainland, I went to see a client and I was feeling really great and happy. And next thing you know, I got this really bad pain in my head. And so I sat down. I thought, that's really strange, when I walked into her house. And I asked her how she was feeling. And I said I had this pain. And I explained the pain. She goes, well, that's the pain that I have. And so then I realized that it was maybe her pain I was picking up. And I was able to let it go. So I've really had to learn to protect myself. Yeah. And
wow. So back to the CPCA. Tell me again, because maybe you said it and maybe I missed it. How big is it? How many members are in BC and across Canada?
I don't know exactly across Canada, but here in BC, we have 600 plus so far, and we've just taken over Yukon. So we have a few members up there, maybe I think about 5 possibly. But we are quite expansive, and we have lots of great, talented people out there that really are genuine and caring and really want to help people.
You must be extremely, extremely busy. Because it seems, maybe it's just that I'm becoming more aware of depression and various mental health issues and addiction and all that sort of thing. And is it only my imagination, or is it getting worse?
I've really noticed with myself, I really have to check in. And this is something when you're even working in healthcare that they want you to check in, at least with a counselor once a year, just to make sure that you're on the right track and you haven't gone away from coping very well and that sort of thing, because we're dealing with some pretty volatile situations. And I've had, many people pass away on me and take their last breath, and you're having to deal with family and emergency people and coroners and, everybody all at once. And so that's a lot for someone that's never really been trained as a registered nurse. That's used to, maybe that's more of their scope of practice, right? So it's really important to check in and to make sure that you are still connecting, you're thinking rationally, and you're acting out in a healthy way, and your feelings are, your feelings are in check.
Yes.
I think for myself, I notice with social media, it's really hard, especially being a person of empathy. It's really hard sometimes. I'm really kind of you don't really know who you're talking to sometimes when it's just a conversation and there's no emotions attached. When you're just typing somebody, you don't really know what they're thinking or what their body language is. And I'll tell you a recent example here. I was on Twitter, and I have quite a few followers on Twitter. And I was pretty excited because Peter Cetera decided he wanted to be my friend, and he sent me a private email, and he told me how, and we all know Peter Cetera. He was one of the founders of Chicago, right? And that's my favorite band, and I actually have one of their vinyl records of his.
Woohoo!
And so I was kind of excited, and he's talking about a reality show, and you don't know for sure if it's really the truth. You know, we can't keep up on all these celebrities and what they're up to and stuff. And so we got talking, and it went on for, about a day. And I started thinking, is this guy really for real? And he started telling me how the next day he started telling me how he'd been thinking about me all night, and how I was the one that he wanted to marry. And even though he wanted to know if 70, because Peter is 70, and he wanted to know if that was too old for me. And he wanted to take me. Peter has started, traveling. And so he wanted to take me, and he was going to take me on the red carpet down in April and all these sorts of things. And so I kind of approached family members of Peter that had become a Facebook acquaintance, and his brother actually. And he said, no, that guy's like a fake. And I said, oh, well, he really thinks that he's Peter Cetera. So here's another example of I kind of wondered at first, but you don't really know. And some people think that they can tell who is a fake on Twitter and Facebook and stuff, but you can't. I mean, how many people of my friends on Facebook have already been, they've had duplicate accounts done of them and their pictures stolen and that sort of thing. So I think I've really had to step back and say, how much of this do you want to be on and what do you want to use it for? So I've sort of developed kind of a love-hate thing. And I've realized that that's okay because I still need to use it for business. I can still interact with the people that I want to and still maintain that. But I think it's more important to really get off and to do more of the connecting outside of being on the computer all the time. And I think we're going to see higher rates of depression as a result of that over time. And, with the cyberbullying with the children that's going on, it's horrible.
It's awful. It's awful.
It is awful. Yeah.
And it's not just the children, unfortunately. We're getting a lot of tech-savvy seniors who know how to push the right buttons, but who don't understand some of the dangers.
This is it, and I think that the younger people, they've like my nieces and stuff, they've grown up with this era, and that's what they're taught at school. A lot of them are. A good friend of mine in Calgary has been a teacher for 25 years, and she taught the first school. They're a pilot program, and that's all they're teaching from is cell phones and laptops, So they're kind of used to it, but still there's some dangers
yes.
with what they're getting involved with. And because they're young, they don't really understand the seriousness of it. And I think in their minds, they're thinking maybe it's funny, but they're not realizing that the whole implications of what's going to happen outside. And that's when the bullying happens and kids are getting jealous. And, it's happened to a few of my own family members that were in school. So, yeah, you just have to be so careful in what we're getting involved with and what we're spending our time doing.
Well, and here's the thing, is that our lives are becoming more stressful by the millisecond, it seems.
It does.
Or maybe that's just my ability to cope with technology. Talk about a love-hate relationship. I'm a technological troglodyte. But the point is that our kids are not. They are very tech savvy, and they've grown up with not one device. They've got 3 and 4 on the go at the same time. So they are flooded with information, be it knowledge-based, socially based, emotionally based. They're getting all this information at very early ages now, when we may not be cognitively ready to deal with all of that. So the stress levels, I think, are really, really rising. And unfortunately, because we have medicine and whatnot and birth control and all that sort of wonderful thing, when we do have our children, it's because we want them desperately. And we overprotect to a degree. So the kids are less able to cope with regular stresses than they were in the past, because they've always got this safety net that we've provided. So I am so concerned for the stress factors for our younger kids who are on media and using it well and knowing what they're doing, but they are emotionally not ready to understand.
Exactly.
It concerns me a great deal because they really aren't ready to deal with consequences of very much.
Exactly.
And so here we have 6-year-olds that are tech savvy, but are not at the cognitive ability to understand the consequences of what they're doing.
Exactly. And that is the part that parents really need to be aware of these days and really be on top of their kids. And I know you come across as a bit of a nag. I don't have kids. I wasn't able to have kids, but I just see it, with my own family members that have children and grandchildren and the concerns that are there. So yeah, it's something that people really need to pay more attention to.
Well, and let's think about the scarring that can happen from some of the cyberbullying or even inappropriate information that they receive when they're not cognitively able to deal with it. And so this has they have to have some way of dealing with this information and these emotions. They've got the media to help them get it, but what do they do to help them deal?
Yes.
And so I'm wondering that you're working with seniors and that's where you want to take your business. Are there people, wonderful people like yourselves, that are interested in helping these young kids that have gotten too much information too soon?
There are lots of people like that. In fact, I've just started a GoFundMe program, and I'm wanting
to work program?
With, well, I've got something on GoFundMe. It's you set up this GoFundMe and then you put out this campaign, and I've set it up. It's only been going for a couple of weeks, and I've raised $100, and I want to work with teenage girls 12 to 17 here in Nanaimo and Ladysmith. And I had come across an article in the Nanaimo News Bulletin and through a bit of more research, and there's a child youth advocacy group called First Call, and they had stated the statistics, and we are like the highest child poverty rate, I think, in Canada. BC is. Yeah. And that's really sad. We see all these refugees coming in, and we're not even taking care of the people that we have here living already. And that concerns me.
Yes. And that's a whole other topic.
It is.
But it's so important.
It is. And, I did some research, and I couldn't really find too many other counselors in the area. There's one doing something called Girl Power, and the Nanaimo Women's Resource Center, I think, is also doing something for young people in the summertime. So I decided that I would get this going because I have worked with seniors for 21 years, but I like all ages. And so I wanted to do this empowerment program for 2 months with some girls, and just to really help them, because I discovered in this research that 6+% here in the Nanaimo Ladysmith in 2011 were 15 and under are living in income assistant homes. And I think that's a really high statistic.
So what kind of help are you trying to provide?
So I want to empower them through really talking about your core beliefs and really getting strong in who you are. I think that's really important. And also because children they're sponges, and they take a lot of what is going on in their own home. So really trying to separate that and focus on, how they, and try to build a better relationship with the parents. And I took my specialty in community counseling. So that means it's getting out of the office and going more into the home environment and really seeing what's actually going on there, because you don't always get a full picture when you're just sitting in an office counseling people.
No, you don't. No, you don't. So we are now into the area of mental health. Mm-hmm. So there are still, even in our enriched day and age, people still don't understand the difference between mental health and mental illness.
Correct.
Would you like to tell our listeners about that, please?
Well, mental health, having good mental health is it's your emotional, your psychological, and your social well-being, how you think, act, and feel, and how it determines how you handle stress and relate to others, and with the choices that you're making. And this is important in every stage of your life. when we talk about experiencing mental health problems, I mean, these are things that affect your thinking, mood, and behavior. And there's many factors that contribute that. So it might be biological factors, your genes or brain chemistry. Maybe someone in your family suffers from, some sort of depression, some form of mental illness. Your life experiences, trauma or abuse. I know when I was bullied, how that really affected me. And some of these things on the list, that some of the early warning signs were eating, sleeping too much. We tend to want to pull away from people, and you got low energy, and, you just feel really hopeless. There's confusion, forgetfulness, on edge, angry. And this can happen to people, like I said, that trauma, abuse, family history, like I said, of mental health problems. So it's really important to maintain that positive, to really keep a list. I tell people to write a journal, and it really helps on how you're feeling for a month, whether it's chronic pain or depression or whatever, just so you can kind of keep track of how you're feeling. So when you go to the doctor, you can, have the full picture of what's really going on. So if you're eating, sleeping too much or too little, or you're pulling away from people and not doing the things that you used to enjoy, you have low energy or none, you feel numb to the emotions or to the people around you, any unexplained aches and pains that the doctors can't find anything about, feeling hopeless or helpless, you're doing more drinking and smoking and drugs than you normally would, you feel confused or forgetful, you're yelling and fighting a lot with your friends or your family members. You're experiencing severe mood swings. That's causing problems in some of your relationships. Having persistent thoughts and memories you can't get out of your head because maybe you had a fight with someone, or you've had a disagreement and a miscommunication, and so you've parted ways, but there's still some unleft answers, and so those things are still going on in your mind. You need to actually sit down. You can't just run away from everyone. You got to sit down and actually talk to people about these things that happened, and that's going to build a healthy relationship, and that's a good way of coping. Coping and working through it together.
Do you ever get, I know I do, so maybe I need to talk to someone. Years ago, if I had a disagreement with someone and they wouldn't listen to my point of view, and I felt unjustly blamed or whatnot, they will come back and haunt me forever because I didn't get the last word in. So I'm always torn between being spoiled rotten and needing the last word, and simply being angry that I wasn't heard properly. So it's not always, well, maybe it is a sign of mental instability.
I don't think so. For me, I think that I'm unstable at times because I have situations that happen, and then I'm wanting to talk about it with that person because it's still affecting my life, and yet people are saying, well, that doesn't, it's not about you, but it is about me because a big part of what happened in that situation and that circumstance affected me hugely. And so if that person is just walking away and not willing to talk, I mean, that's not helping me move forward or them move forward. And then it's just compiling all these things. And that's when people, I think, become bitter and angry and they just give up. And
then it festers.
Yes.
And either you surrender and go, I can't deal with this, and you do all that turning away and sleeping to hide and all that kind of stuff, or it can come out in another direction where you become unreasonably angry.
Yeah, or you just keep, constantly saying to them, like, hello.
Yes.
I thought you wanted to talk, but you still haven't gotten together with me yet. So what's really going on here?
and then, of course, it magnifies, right?
It does. And it magnifies in our minds, and that plays on our minds when we're all feeling, and, especially if you're feeling some sort of chronic pain or anything, that's compiling with the depression. And so these things are really compounding. And then things, they get worse. And you start to give up on people and think that everyone's this way. And what's wrong with me? And you start to, I've gone to counselors and go, what's wrong with me? This person just doesn't want to talk to me about what happened, and I'm really frustrated. and yeah, like it's just, people just can't stop and start that way. It's just not healthy. It's not a healthy way of coping and getting along with people. And I've always gotten along really well with people.
Well, of course
Up
you
until
have.
the last 20 years, I've run into people where I'm just having that difficulty.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, so
My
what do
favorite
you...
emoticon, hitting head against brick.
That's it.
Use that
That's
one a lot.
it. So Trish, because you are a certified, you have a registered professional
Yeah.
counseling and diplomas in psychology and whatnot, do you have access to psychiatrists and whatnot that you can refer people to when the problem goes deeper than...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really, as a registered professional counselor, we have 24 codes of ethics that we have to follow. And that is definitely, if you're stepping outside your practice, I mean, you don't want to be taking on somebody that you are not qualified for, or you don't have the skills to be able to do that. So yeah, and we're talking about a lot of the deeper issues. And so it's really important that when you're doing your first assessment, that you get a really good detailed assessment. And if you find, in 1 or 2 sessions and maybe you're just something's not going right, and you think there needs to be you can actually request, for them to go to their doctor and write a letter, stating, we don't tend to want to use labels these days, but just stating what you feel is kind of going on and that they need maybe a referral to somebody else that can give them a bigger picture of what's happening. And then going from there. You have to be very...
Yes, you do. This business of labels is a curious one, because for some people, they actually feel relief to have a name on what they're feeling.
That's true.
Somehow it legitimizes it, that it's not just some made-up thing and that they're just simply overreacting or that they can't cope or whatever. But for some people, having a label saying this is the disease you're dealing with, or this is the kind of circumstance, and this is where it fits in the hierarchy of this kind of thing, it confuses me that some people are so frightened of labels, whereas others welcome them.
Mm-hmm. It is confusing because I think to a certain degree we need to know what we're dealing with, and some counselors, might argue with me on that, but I really feel that it's important to know what you're dealing with so you know exactly the types of counseling measures that you can offer that person, because you want to give them the very best to help them, right? To be able to solve their problems and work through their issues, so they can live healthier and they feel more confident and more self-assured of where they're going and how they're, where they're at in their life. And so, I find that in my past experience, before I became a counselor even, that people that had bipolar and that sort of thing, they really, I think it has a lot more to do with maybe the doctor not. I had a friend once that had bipolar, and so he was always upset because he felt the doctor only wanted to look at that specific issue and not other issues that were going on. And it turned out that he actually had other issues going on that maybe weren't being addressed. So it's really that fine detail of, even if the doctor does give them a label, there's other parts to this person, and we need to treat them like they're whole people, whether they have clinical depression or manic depression or whatever. They're still human people that need to be embraced and to feel like they're part of society and they're contributing. And so I think it's really important that people are really not judging. And I'm lucky because, not judging where they're coming.
Yes, and it amazes me that there is still so much stigma around mental illness.
There is.
If you say that you've got chicken pox, well, okay, you've got chicken pox and it'll be fine. Mm-hmm. But if you say that you are suffering from clinical depression, just that tiptoe into the world of mental difficulty, and people still look at you funny, or you don't want to tell them that you've got clinical depression because they might look at you funny. Am I imagining this, or is it still pretty abundant out there, the stigma over mental conditions?
I really think that the stigma still exists, and it's unfortunate because these are really beautiful, talented people, and that shouldn't be the limiting belief of why that person, nobody ever knows the full picture of what goes on in any family, and no family is far from perfect. We all have our issues. Some talk about it and some don't. And so I think it's one of those things. I always admire those that are willing to talk about the issues of what they're having. In fact, we have a colleague, and he is doing very well, and he suffers from clinical depression, and he actually had a CBC documentary made about him, and he spoke at our conference and in Vernon in September, and he takes people that have mental health issues and he puts them on stage and teaches them to be a comedian. And then he goes around. I'd love to have him come back to Nanaimo. He's been here once before, and he brings his group of people, and they get up on stage, and for the first time, they're actually feeling like they're accepted into society because they're able to finally find some humor in what they've been experiencing and the label around that. And people are going, you know what, I actually get where you're coming from now, that they're up on stage and they're talking about it and kind of making some jokes about it, instead. And I think it's really cool what he's doing in helping people that way.
It takes a brave person, though, from going straight from, my background is theater. So I'll get up on stage at any time, at any place, and I suffer with clinical depression, but it's not, I don't feel any stigma about it at all. Mm-hmm. It's a chemical imbalance, and I take my little pill, and I do my little meditations, and I'm perfectly fine, just like everyone else on the planet. And I have no problem saying so.
Yeah.
But for others who still are living under this stigma, I don't think that you could pry them up onto a stage with a pitchfork.
No, it's very difficult because I think it's just so long ingrained in their mind that it's going to take a lot for them to really overcome and really accept that that's, a part of who they are.
Well, and I don't understand it. If someone's got a thyroid problem, so they've got a thyroid problem. So someone's got clinical depression, so they've got clinical depression. I don't understand why. Is it still so much in the land of the taboo that it's so misunderstood that we're still so fearful? Because that's where misunderstandings come from, is when you're frightened of it because you don't get it.
That's true. Right? I think it's really changed. I think it was more in a lot of the older generations. And so now we're seeing more of the young people that are talking about things more, and people in my age bracket that are talking about things more. And I think in the last 10 years, we've seen more people come out and talk about, that they've been abused and they have mental health issues, and they've suffered from depression and all sorts of things. So I think it's really healthy that we're talking about it. But we don't want it to become our full life focus of.
Well, goodness sake, no. No more so than if you had, something else. It's not the focus of your life. It's just one of the conditions through which you function.
Exactly.
Right?
Like I suffer from chronic pain because I had a fall, and I have chronic degenerative disc disease, and it's part of who I am now, and I'm getting treated, but it's just who I am, and I can't do some of the things that I used to anymore, and
That's
it's
right.
Unfortunate, and I've had to grieve that because I can't do the thing. I was always very active, and you couldn't keep me down, and, so.
But now I have arthritis, and so when it rains, I have to ki-yi a little bit. Well, why can't people who are feeling a little on the low side ki-yi a little bit too? What's wrong with it?
Yeah, I think it's just how, and we want to talk about this more, counselors do. I know we talk about it all the time, and it's like, we need to talk about more and more about mental health and get people talking about it so we can lose the stigma around it and feel good about who we are, regardless of whether we have clinical depression or manic depression or major depressive episode, or epilepsy or whatever. It's just
or Asperger's,
Yeah, exactly.
Any of those.
Exactly.
So I'm so happy. Well, that's one of the reasons I was so thrilled to have you on the show, because these things have to be put out in the open. That said, in years gone by, if people had asthma, they were looked upon as being unable to cope with pressures of life. And so they got all worked up, and so they couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
And to cure asthma, all you had to do was relax. And that, honestly, that was, my grandmother believed that until her dying day. So I hope that this business of looking sideways at people or looking funny at people who have some sort of mental illness will eventually go the way of that other nonsense, right?
I hope so. I hope that it changes, because that is something that is a real concern to counselors, because we want to see people living full lives and not being so caught up in that stigma of having something, that they feel people are going to put them down as a result, or not want to invite them because, they have clinical depression, or not, oh my gosh, they won't be able to cope if we invite them over here because they've got this problem. Like, or their father was like that, so they're probably at home doing the exact same thing on the couch that their father did, and maybe that father committed suicide or whatever. It's who are we to judge and come up with all this stuff about these people that we, it's really sad that people do that, and they are putting all these more pressures on people instead of just embracing them and saying, you know what, you have clinical depression, let's get out and do more. Why don't we, come here and help them.
Exactly right.
Treat them like a regular person, because they are a regular person, and a lot of them are very talented. I know I went to a thing, and someone was talking about their clinical depression, and someone thought that everyone in Hollywood had just suffered from it. It's like, come on, it's not just in Hollywood, it's in probably the majority of people around us. There's just some people that don't want to talk about it and other people that do. So it's like, it affects everybody.
It really does. It really does.
I had people think that I dated a guy once, and then I found out 25 years later why he went and married someone else, because they felt their family was more dysfunctional to fit in with their family that was dysfunctional. And I always thought my family was okay. But I mean, just because I didn't talk about the fact that, there was alcoholism in my family, not in my immediate family, but with my relatives, and some abuse and those sorts of things. It's like, it exists in every family. It's just some people don't. And if you have the base of a good foundation of a relationship, you can get through anything, as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely right. I couldn't agree more. Now, you're also you have diplomas in everything. So, what about this Reiki master teacher thing that you do? Tell me what that is, please.
Yeah, Reiki is a bit of a...
Reiki, sorry.
Yeah, it's energy healing. It comes out of Japan, and it was founded by a monk over there who had some profound messages come to him about these different symbols and how they could help people. And so it started off over there in that part of the world, and becoming a Reiki master actually was very expensive at one time to do. And now you can become a Reiki level 1, 2, and 3, which is master teacher. And it seems to be doing really well. I found that not everybody's open to it. It's some people think it's kind of like, ooh, kind of thing. But a lot of people are finding that it's really helping. I find that it really helps with people that have cancer, are in pain, because it helps them to relax rather than taking medication all the time. Why not give them something that's going to give them nice, and it's just all with good intention. It's nothing evil. It's just wanting the good intentions and the best for them, for their higher good. And, I go to God. So it's like, God, help this person, to just help them to relax. And so you just kind of do these different hand motions over the whole body, and it takes about an hour to do. And then you do the back. And sometimes, though, if you tend to be more intuitive, you can discover things about people. So some things will come to you when you're I had one lady in my bed once, and on my massage table, and I went over her face and felt like she had been injured in her cheek area. And I just intuitively, I just said to her, I feel like maybe you've had a bit of trauma in this area. Like, have you been, punched in the face or something like that. And she jumped off the table and said, "How did you know?" She said, "Yes, I've had a lot of trauma in that area." And she couldn't continue with the Reiki session. And other people, their energy's so good, they don't need that. So it just depends on what people are open to, really. But I like it.
Well, and anything that you can do to relax people and make them feel at ease means that you can actually help them more.
Yeah, and that's what I find. And I don't think, it's just tuning into what's for this person's higher good and how can I help them. And it doesn't make you, a healer, or you're not some magician that's going to come along, but it's just helping them just to relax and to be calm and just to really just deep breathe and we really don't take time to do that. No, we really don't.
We rush around, my goodness, these broad stroke generalizations that I'm creating today. I know a great number of people, myself included, that run around like a dog chasing their tail and catching ourselves going around corners and never taking the time to just breathe and just be.
It's true. We think we need to get all this stuff and we can't. Yeah, we live in a very busy society, and it's really important to just take that time to relax and to just relax. And that was the purpose, I think, he started with Reiki, was just people can just get like a level 1 and then they can just kind of do it on themselves. It's just teaching them how to relax. Some people find that in their, reading the Bible and talking to God. And other people, Buddhists, they are really much more into probably the Reiki and stuff like that. So it just depends on where people are open. But I tend to be more of an open person anyways to stuff. And I'm always curious about how things are working and how energy works and all that kind of stuff. So,
do you use any of those ideas in your own artwork? Notice the segue.
Yeah.
Turning over to talk to you about as an artist.
I haven't done too much of that in my artwork. I have done some portraits of Japanese and ladies and the geishas and the tranquil with the bamboo and that kind of thing. I'm just kind of exploring. I was mostly a portrait artist, and that's what I started out as a number of years ago. I was going through some emotional stress at the time, and so I was helping. I was part of the union up in Pell River, and so I was helping out somebody, and she was taking these art courses, and so I said, I want to learn how to do that because I've been drawing since I was a kid, but I just would like to fine-tune a few things. So I signed up for a couple of courses with Luke Raffin, who's a very well-known artist, and his stuff is as good or better than Bateman. And so I took a few classes from him, and then I kind of went into it and did portraits. And now I'm trying to branch off and try different things.
So what's your medium?
My medium is acrylic and oils, and I also like pencils. So,
what a multi-talented person you are. and yet there's a flow to it all, Trish, because there's this empathy, which is, again, picking up on vibrations and energy. And the Reiki leads into that as well. It's just another facet of that, as is the artwork. Mm-hmm. And it all seems to culminate in a person who is deeply caring about the world and is very sensitive to the vibes. If you'll pardon but again, when you are painting, when you are creating someone's portrait, it's not enough to simply get the shape of the face right. You have to capture the essence and the eyes of the person. And that's what you do as a counselor, and that's what you do with the Reiki, and that seems to be your calling, is to capture the essence of people.
Yeah, I love that about portraits because when I'm doing them, you learn so much about them by the eyes. It's like I did one of Johnny Cash, and I'm like doing his eyes. I'm like, wow, he really was an intense man, He was powerful and intense, and he had so much strong energy. And so, yeah, I really noticed that in a bunch of the different portraits that I did. Well,
and then your other area is you're a poet.
Yeah, how I I've been writing poems since I was a child, and I was following this film, My Father and the Man in Black, and so I was meeting all these really interesting people on my Facebook page and writing all these poems, and it was kind of helping me work through some of my own baggage that was going on as well, because I haven't been very successful in love. So it was really helping me to do a lot of these writings. So I wrote this book and put it together, and then I just had this brain thought one day and said I should make it into a book, because I was approached by one of the Johnny Cash fan page. I call them curators, because they're taking care of all Johnny Cash's photos, and they have thousands of people in their groups. And so she had approached me and said that she was looking for someone to illustrate her children's book. And so I needed to be able to get copyright. I needed to have a book at least published already. So that's how I kind of got this going in this book. But I can read a poem for you if you like.
I would so love that. I would love that.
Okay. So here's one, and this is about empathy. So think before you act. To walk in someone's shoes takes an enormous chance at finding out what they may know and what they understand. The heart that is tender, a soul that is deep, to find that they've seen darkness, losses, and defeat. So if by chance you want some advice, listen to your heart and mind and find out what they know and walk their steps in time. And I think, sometimes when I wrote that poem, we don't always stop and think about how another person might be feeling or how they might be reacting to a certain situation or what's really going on. And that's what I always appreciated about my mom. When I grew up, she would say, be careful what you say about that person, or, don't judge them. You don't know what's going on in their life. And it's so true. We never really do know the full picture of what's happening.
No, even if you're, for example, to put it back in real solid terms, as you're driving down the road and someone is coming up behind you very quickly and is hanging onto your bumper, well, the first reaction is, what's your problem, buddy?
Yeah.
But you don't know. Maybe they've just gotten a phone call that something has happened to a child.
Yes.
Maybe they've just gotten injured. Maybe they've just found out that they have to do a task at work that they really didn't want to do. You don't know. They may not be just being a difficult pain in the butt driver coming up behind you. Why are they doing it?
It's true. So we really need to pay attention. And I think if the world had more empathy, we'd be a lot more kinder to each other. It seems to me that we we sure could use a lot more kindness and empathy these days. And that sounds very dark and bleak and whatnot. But I feel so much pain from the constant wars in the Middle East and the constant battles in Africa and the constant picking at each other over beliefs that the fighting over religion just kills me, because in essence all the religions teach the same basic premise of treat each other well, treat the earth well, be kind. Yes.
So why are we fighting wars for centuries and centuries over which God said it best? I don't get it, but but that's me. And other people have much stronger belief structures than that, and so feel entirely justified. But before we react so badly, why can we not just take that millisecond to think, where are they coming from?
Yes, exactly.
But that takes time.
Everything takes time.
And that takes thinking, not just reacting.
It's true.
And we
it takes
really
a lot
are.
Of thought.
Yeah, and we are very reactive, aren't we?
We are very reactive, yes. And someone always said to me years ago that you get what you react to. And I didn't quite understand that at first. And I thought after a while, that's kind of true.
What an interesting idea. You get what you react to. Yeah.
I want to read one more poem to you, because I did meet all these great Johnny Cash people and some that were good friends of Johnny Cash through this documentary. But it's a Johnny Cash poem. And It's called Johnny Cash poem. So, ring of fire, walk the line. Most can relate in and beyond the prison gate. I think what people loved about Johnny Cash most was his depth perception, his zest for life. And even when he was in trouble, he always came back and with another struggle. Something to which a lot of us can relate. He was never fake. He spoke his truth and lived his life as best he knew. He gathered crowds wherever he went. He frustrated some and yet was loved by many. His songs resonate in our hearts, minds, and lips as we think of his shows and the songs that he wrote that takes us on a journey through many a road. We all long for love and are lucky to find someone to support us through our turbulent times. Like June did for Johnny, which created a whole new life for him. They started singing songs with more of a hymn. People still love Johnny, June Carter, and their kids, and it really doesn't matter at all what he did. His fans, they do adore him and carry on with this. Songs by guitar they will strum to or listen to his songs on the iTunes. Some still treasure their old LPs while 45s are locked up in cabinets for all to see. You know, and they are some of the best fans I think I've ever met of an artist.
Wow.
They are true to the core.
There was a man who and there are many people like that, but they are and pardon the pun, it's not intended, the unsung heroes.
Yes,
but
and he had to come over. He came through so much, you know, he had to overcome so much.
Yes, but he was able to find a vent.
Yes.
He was able to find a place where what he was feeling could be put into words, actions, deeds, and appreciated for what it was. The sad and sorry thing is that there are so many that could be just like him that haven't found that avenue for expression.
Yes, and I think we have that opportunity, and I'm hoping that I can help the young people find that before they get into their 50s and their 60s and they're still wondering, you know, kind of what direction they want to go in.
Well, and here's a question, just because we are beginning to run quite short of time here, but I do want to put one question to you that has puzzled me, and maybe I'm just not thinking about it quite right. We know that young girls today are in trouble because of the body image and the self-image and all that kind of thing, seriously created by a lot of media attention and unrealistic expectations.
It's true.
And a lot of attention is beginning to be paid to that.
Yes.
I have a question about our young men.
Uh-huh.
Women have become stronger, more vocal, more assertive.
Yes.
And that's brilliant. I love that.
It is.
But what has it left for our men?
I know, and I agree with that and wonder myself, and I would like to put a workshop on that to help men kind of figure that out, because I think there was a time where they feel like they're not really needed, you know. There's all these strong women, and sort of what role do they play anymore when it comes to that old traditional way of, you know, the man is the head of the house and then the woman and the family, and that's how traditionally it was meant to be, right? And yeah, I think that men, have to go through a lot more than women do when it comes to divorce and stuff like that these days.
Well, and it's very difficult because all right, now that women have taken their rightful place in business and leadership and whatnot, men typically, and there's those broad general brushstrokes again, but
yes.
A lot of men's identity were tied up in the jobs that they have done, and especially in the male-dominated fields.
Correct.
So have women entering the workforce in such numbers and with such strength, and with every justifiable reason for doing so, are men still able to get the sense of purpose and identity through their positions at work the way they used to? And if not, where are they able to get it?
In my mind, I think they do. I think that we still live in a male-dominated world when it comes to business. Men are still getting the better pay, and men are still in those positions of leadership. We're starting to see more women come into positions of leadership. And I think that it's maybe slightly starting to equal off, but it's not quite there yet. That's my thinking.
No, it's not. But again, with our young men then, with our young teenagers and whatnot, do they have any idea of what's expected of them Would they like to know? Do they really appreciate having no boundaries, just do whatever? It's an interesting thing to think about what's going on in their heads.
Yes, it is. And I think that it's so important that kids learn their boundaries at a young age. I think that was something that my friends criticized me over the years because they never felt like I had any boundaries. But in my thinking, I never thought that I had to set boundaries. I thought my friends would treat me the way that I was treating them. So why do I have to say, you can't do that or you can't treat me that way? It should have just been consciously there where I never had that type of thinking before. I had friends that we respected each other already. So
very interesting. Trish, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. It has been an absolute delight to get into your world and find out how you are helping the people of Vancouver Island and beyond. I'd like to thank our producer Nesha and remind everyone that you can listen to the show on Bold Radio Station. Just go to www.boldradiostation.com. You'll be able to hear the show on podcast within moments of finishing the show. I'd like to encourage you to tell your friends that they can listen to the show at any time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I am so looking forward to seeing you again next week. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Off the Coast, Views from Vancouver Island, with host Rosemarie Barnes. To book Rosemarie as a speaker or speaking coach, or to offer suggestions of extraordinary guests for the show, please visit her website at www.confidentstages.com.